How are we doing today? Happy Friday. I think GM is UTC. Richard from Manifold was trying to get GMT, like GM time, passed as the official time zone of crypto, which was just all time zones all the time, which is max chaos, which we love. Okay, cool. I'm gonna give David another minute to join, and then we can go ahead and get started. I shared an agenda in the chat. Feel free to add anything else that anyone thinks is missing for now, but yeah, I think we can just give David another minute. So, hello, Jan Sky. I feel bad. Sometimes I mix up. I feel like there's so many names with, yeah, Sky or One and Open Sky. I was like accidentally mixing you up with One Stone, or not mixing you up, but like the names last week. We love it. Okay, cool. I pinged David. We'll see if he shows up, but yeah, just wanted to kick off because I know we don't have a ton of time. But I saw there were some really great discussions happening in the Discord yesterday. I'm actually in Europe right now, so like my time zones have been totally off, so I didn't have a chance to fully read through them. So I was hoping maybe someone in the group might be willing to just give a quick TLDR on just the discussion that was happening with Rune in the governance channel about ABC responsibilities and interactions with ADs in the governance channel yesterday. Because from what I've been following specifically around the other CVCs and just the scope of responsibilities happening. There, it's continues to be an advantage that we have these meetings on Fridays because I think we get a lot of learnings specifically from the other groups. And so, yeah, it was my understanding that, like you said, Open Sky, we just need to craft language on how advisory councils get selected. But I just wanted to see if there were any other just notes on that that I should be aware of or the group wanted to surface just about what that means with response to like what we're not responsible for anymore, or like it seemed to me as if that was a more of a narrowing of a scope. Yeah, so again, so from what I'm reading from number one, the chat, my own understanding, and just kind of repeating it back to everyone is just this idea of composable specifically having kind of this set of requirements that we think the selection process should follow. Obviously, that doesn't mean us specifically selecting a person. It doesn't mean being super rigid, but just like similar to our governance strategy documentation, just like what principles we find most important when going through this selection process. Is that appropriate? Yeah, and so I see that almost as a separate document. Open Sky, I know you volunteered to kind of start drafting the docs that we're supposed to have done by the end of the quarter, but just maybe this is either part of or in addition to those two, which is just like I said, kind of just the same strategy documentation, but just through the lens of appointing advisory council members. Yeah, that would be great, Open Sky.
Yeah, so speaking from the other AVC that we belong to, KISS, we're going to tackle next week some of this stuff. And as an example, I think is actually reading through some of the MIPS, and one of the MIPS is 108, which is pretty much, in my opinion, the growth core unit, not the growth core unit, but the growth scope. It's been rebranded to, Lee, what the hell is it branded to? It has some accessibility
Yeah.
scope. So as an example, I was looking at that, and it looks like, and this is because, right, I have to kind of do some stuff for KISS AVC next week. It looks like, you know, AVCs can kind of give the facilitator, the accessibility facilitator, guidance on how to hire accessibility advisor council member, but you can't micromanage that. You kind of just got to give them the criteria, right? So I think that's something that this AVC and other AVCs have to be aligned with how that's going to get done. And then from there, you kind of leave it to the facilitator, whether it's the accessibility facilitator or other types of facilitators. So yeah, that's my take from it. A lot of work left to be done, obviously.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. And yeah, it's interesting because I also saw that I think the refi CVC had started kind of drafting these for each of the different scopes, and they were almost entirely the same. Yeah, I see some notes in here just about like making sure that we're focusing on like currently approved rules and then evaluating them on newer proposals as opposed to just you know, making rules for things that haven't even come to terms yet. But yeah, what the DAO is actually working on is better reflected in the new scope. It makes sense to focus on it. Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, honestly, to me, the most not necessarily confusing, but just like laborious part of this process is just trying to make sense of the prioritization of all these different things. Just speaking from my own personal experience. Yeah. So any support there on just like, yeah, really appreciate the comments in the chat and people raising, you know, maybe let's not worry about that right now, or where we can make the most impact, because I don't want to waste anyone's time in here. And again, I think that's one of the benefits we have of having this meeting on Fridays, learning from what the other groups are doing. Okay, great. So other than that, yeah, these are all really great notes, but in terms of just even what we should focus on for the purposes of this conversation based on what happened and or what we need to decide on for next week, um, is there anything else that you think we should just be focused on, I guess?
I think the alignment part is really important here because not only do ADs need to be aligned based on their AVC, whether it's dovish, hawkish, or balanced, but I think AVCs should also work on being aligned together. So if we kind of go through a rundown of the AVC meetings that happened this week, let's start with the first one on Tuesday, which was the Regenerative Finance AVC. I don't remember much that was said there because it was a lot of, I'm not trying to make fun of the host, but there's a lot of rambling there, so it kind of lost me. So I couldn't give you the 411 there. I don't remember what it was about, to be honest.
Okay.
Wednesday's call was the Growth AVC hosted by Raphael. That was super cool. We kind of went over the new MIP 102 SP7. Had a couple of discussions there on different views for a couple of the scopes. Golly, I'm trying to remember. Maybe Raphael can comment, and then no meeting yesterday for the AVC we belong to, which is the KISS AVC. Oh yeah, there was one I think on Wednesday night, and reading through it, there was some concerns about how to be anonymous, but also that doesn't kick from what I was reading on Discord, doesn't kick in till the sub DAOs are kind of live, right? So that doesn't look like a 2023 occurrence. So probably happen in 2024. The other part of that discussion that I saw was related to the core artificial intelligence system, the case, which already has been approved, and how to get that going. Yeah, so those have been the discussions. Again, there was one which we belong to, which is the KISS AVC, which was canceled this week. We're going to make it up next week. And as I said earlier, myself, I'm going to be focusing on how we can, exactly what you said earlier, which is how can we help the facilitator of the DAOs, or the sub DAOs, or of the core, hire some of these advisory council members. So I'll be working on that. Hopefully I'll come up with some stuff. But yeah, other than that, like I think the alignment is probably one thing that we should kind of stay focused on, because I see a lot of ideas there on the chat of how things should be done, and like it's super important to get that that alignment. There's so many definitions of that too, by the way, which we can kind of break down on another episode if you want, but it's super important to remember that first part of the Maker Atlas, and kind of understand what exactly universal alignment is and how we can all come together to an agreement. In my opinion.
I love that, and especially with the the focus of this group, which is very much, again, that composable nature, focusing on where we can drive a little bit more collaboration when we're making decisions, and then also some automation as well. So I think maybe, David, honestly, that might be a good, and Open Sky, that might be a good contest for us to run like in the next week, if we want to focus next week on what do we define as universal alignment, and like what would push us, or what can this group do to like push us more in that direction. That might be a good area that I don't think a lot of, at least from what I've read or heard, that all the other groups are primarily focused on, where I think this group can add a lot of impact there. So I don't know if that question itself is too open-ended, but just in terms of task for homework, yeah. Oh, thank you, Defensor. So task for homework, asking everyone how the 5-star AVC call looks like. We have experience and something to compare with now. Yeah, again, like just getting closer to how are we driving more alignment. So maybe there's two contests. Maybe one is what does a 5-star AVC call look like today, knowing what we know now. And then we can compare that in the next meeting, and maybe have it through the discussion of like, what is universal alignment and what can we do to improve the processes of these meetings to get closer to that. Does that feel right?
That
Yes.
sounds like a good idea. I think just as long as we could get the folks to understand what the definition is of the Atlas immutable alignment artifact. I think that would be helpful. I mean, how to have a shared vision, the active alignment engineering, the partnerships and collaborations, right? The alliance structures
Yep.
which require partnership. So yeah, and I think I cut off David, so apologies for that.
No, I only wanted to say yes. That was it. I do have another maybe like broader question, which is like, to what extent is our intention with these meetings for us in the meeting? To what extent is our intention in the meeting for coordinating with all the other AVCs? And to what extent is this like for being more public facing for anyone in Maker or outside of Maker who we might want to come to join us, and like setting that kind of standard in a way that can draw them in as well. Like who's our audience for this meeting? Is it us, or is it a broader world that we want to let know what we're doing?
I think that's a great question. And I actually saw this come up in the Refi ABC topic, or I think it was pushed to a future meeting so that they could, and true name, correct me if I'm wrong, because it sounds like you're following that CVC. But yeah, it sounded like that was a topic that came up, that it was pushed to a subsequent meeting to basically say, hey, we as a group need to focus on what endgame means to us, how this CVC aligns to make decisions so that we can start to finalize, number one, like positioning for external groups to be able to come in, and two, the processes for which, if they do come in, they can participate. Is that fair? Okay, great. Yeah. So yeah, they asked
Yeah, that's
if
really helpful. LDF.
okay, perfect.
I know, I
And
know.
sorry, I
I
was
mean, the
like trying
contingent
to write
audience
the
is hard.
content.
Well, it's hard because we can't see each other's faces or hear, responses, and it's muted. So, yeah, just a tacit applause from me. Agreed.
Okay, great. And I'm literally trying to press send on the two contests so that I get those written down. Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, if anything on here. But yeah, so I think again, for the purposes of this, and David, actually the third bucket of the audience that you asked, I can't remember, I think it was the first one. But I think for this group, oh yeah, now I remember. You asked if the goal was to align with the other CVCs. That was like almost the entirety of the conversation we had in this group in the first call, which was that I think that's what we want our focus to be, so that we can try and, aggregate learnings from all of the different groups, because that felt like a point of friction, at least in the first couple of weeks, which was the fact that people were all kind of asking the same questions, and it was up to the ADs to go to all of the different meetings and then syndicate some of those responses. So that's how we kind of came up with. I know Code Knight's been doing some great work on the newsletter and starting to consolidate insights, and that's why we put a piece of our agenda to surface those from all the meetings that happen earlier in the week before this one does. I also, that brings me to kind of point 3 on our agenda this week, which is how can we better automate that process? So again, Code Knight's been doing some great work in surfacing insights. We've been obviously making space for people to bring things they're learning from other CVCs and or, what's going on throughout the week. But David, I know you and I have even talked about like how do we leverage things like ChatGPT, or how do we start syndicating these learnings more externally, or formalizing them rather, whether that is through, people inputting throughout the week in a contest what's going well, or if anyone has other ideas. But I'd be curious to know if anyone's seen things other than Code Knight's newsletter that have been working.
LDF, did you talk at all about AI before
Just
I jumped
just
on?
that tiny, no, just me saying ChatGPT right now.
Yeah, I mean, this is something I was thinking about this morning. It's just like, um, my personal biggest challenge with Maker is just condensing the sheer amount of information that is available across all of the forums and all the discussions and all the discords and all the groups, and just being able to know what's going on, and what I should focus on. And so I think there's a very easy opportunity just to plug that stuff into AI and have a summary and like just share that every week, at the beginning, and make sure everyone's caught up on that, because everyone is, in different forums, different discussions, different discords, different AVCs, etc. And the more we can consolidate that in one place, I think, man, that would just be so helpful. And I think also just be a good onboarding for anyone else who wants to enter the ecosystem to know where to look. Like almost even if it's almost like a table of contents in a way that just guides you to index, say, what the discussions are that are out there.
Yeah, I totally agree. So on that note, I would be curious, number one, if we could even come up with that list of where we would want to surface insights from. And two, oh wait, what is this, Tim? What is Wizard
So,
Maker?
yeah, so I mean, I will caveat to say that it's definitely also extra frustrating that you work to try and understand what's happening, and then literally 2 days before the voting deadlines, you're changing what the rules are. I was just kind of catching up on something I thought I had understood, but apparently, like, I might have to be stepping down at the end of the month, so that's great. But the tool I just dropped was from the former SES scope. Or whatever, I don't know. Retro dropped it. It's pretty sweet. It's an AI, or I think it's an LLM on top of Endgame's documentation. So you can ask it questions to get there. I think I broke the tokens already, so it's definitely like a work in progress, but it's definitely pretty cool. Yeah, I think there's definitely a few opportunities in AI. I mean, in one of the other refi meetings, we had Pavel, this guy PVL, come in to talk about getting a maker-specific LLM, which I think is actually more powerful more than anything else. So this is kind of, I think, one experiment in that direction, which is pretty cool.
Oh,
And
this
then
is
trying to remember the
awesome.
other one. GovAlpha's formerly, God damn it, former core unit. Again, tired, don't remember new names. Um, GovAlpha also has the Endgame repository, which is they've been dutifully updating and trying to keep pace. But I think writ large, we're all kind of dealing with the same sort of problem. So
Got it. So then that would be to say that these two new resources are somewhat like the best example of what is working or what is being tried right now.
sort of, yeah. And then I think the forum now, if you go to forum.makerdao.com, just redirects you to this landing page that's more aligned with how Endgame is kind of structured, which is like at a high level view pretty nice. But I'll be frank and say that it has now made searching the forum impossible,
Okay.
which I both appreciate because I know long term that will be good, but like right now it's like it's kind of hard to see where those discussions are surfacing without like bookmarking the right place to find it. So I don't know. See if I can surface the link where it's just like this is the Twitter feed of everything happening in the DAO, basically.
Got
Let me
it.
see if I can find that link.
Okay. And then yeah, David, you actually bring up a good point too, which is that maybe let's not try to tackle within the constructs of this group, like organizing all maker information, probably not going to happen, but to the extent that we can even summarize our own learnings, yeah, maybe that is using Otter AI and summarizing what comes out of this meeting and encouraging the other CVCs to do the same, and then maybe rolling that up at the end of every week. That could be a good maybe first step. I like the idea of us trying something ourselves and then using that as a playbook for other people to leverage once we know it's working for us. So maybe we start with our own experiment there.
I mean, that's also like at the very least we should be a model, right? In
Yeah.
terms of like how to run these things. So yeah, that makes sense. But I would love if there just was more way to have more coordination with the other AVCs and set standards across AVCs for how we're all operating in a way that allows us to more easily engage with each other as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think again, like free up the time and space, number one, for the ADs who are attending multiple of these meetings per week, and also the CVC members, like past, present, and future, that are going to have to catch up on a bunch more context as they get started anyway. So yeah, maybe for next week, it would be great to try out maybe a minimum set of AI features in addition to the contests. So yeah, transcribe the recording using Whisper, run that text through GPT-4 and ask it to extract the summarize every idea, problem, and solution. Oh my gosh. Yeah, this is where it gets fun. But I'm like, Yeah, maybe if we just start with otter.ai, or we can run a contest on what tool to use, but just summarizing meeting recordings as step 1 is probably a good first step.
Where does everyone? So a lot of people here have been on calls with the other AVCs this week. Like where do you feel like the challenges are? Again, just talking at the meta level, just in terms of like how the discussions are being coordinated, like how information is being shared, like where do you see strengths and weaknesses in attending those, and where do you see opportunity as well for further coordination?
Knowing what to produce is not easy. Okay, fair. Yeah, I feel that.
I mean, I could point out a couple of things that this AVC probably needs to do if the current MIP 102 SP7 passes, assuming that there's the alignment conservers, which is you guys, ADs like ourselves, being the backbone of maker governance, and we have alignment with the new MIP 102 SP7. You guys should probably be working on your what the hell is it called? The 280 character thing where you have to say what your strategic view is. Is it dovish? Is it hawkish? Is it balanced? ADs can help you with that a bit. And then on the final aligned scope proposal, which is formerly known as the, I have the worst memory. It's formerly known as a document something, whatever. So on that document, which is done every quarter, the aligned scope proposal, ADs can also help you. So I think leaning on the ADs a lot should be helpful. And also, we got to remember that if MIP 102 SP7 passes, it's going to be cut down to 5 scopes. So you kind of want to do your meetings rotating from scope to scope, essentially doing two of these meetings per month. And I think one good thing that was pointed out this week by Vigilant was paying attention to section of the Atlas, section, I think 2.9, I think it is, which kind of tells ADs that we have to help you guys. Like, we have to actually help you draft not only the aligned scope proposals, but also with other things, right? Kind of keep you in the game of sort of being universally aligned, which I'm pretty sure you guys are going to do. But I think that's just something that we need to kind of align here, because misalignment can happen easily. There's a thing there on MIP 102 called slippery slope, which I think is super cool, where you kind of start speaking your own biases and you kind of slip into that misalignment. So I think that's super important to kind of fend off, right? Because the risk of misalignment can lead to poor outcomes, right, and negative consequences. So I think that's super important to keep in mind.
I think that's great, especially for the context of the focus of next week and just even some of the homework that we've described, which is just keeping that, like, saying alignment is one thing, continuously redefining it and checking against it, I think, is another. And so moving in that direction is, yeah, definitely something that we want to keep encouraging. And sorry, I'm also trying to like read the chat. That actually, I know we're talking about it in the context of live calls and being anonymous, but I was also thinking about it in the context of using something like Otter AI, in that it's going to miss a lot of the great conversation that's happening in the chat. So even thinking about that, like being able to syndicate information from a number of different sources together, even in one call, is not easy.
Out of curiosity, does anybody on this call consider themselves like a maker noob? Like, does anybody consider themselves like fairly new or fairly lost in the process or lost in the sauce? Or does everyone here feel like, more OG side of the spectrum?
You're like on the scale of noob to OG, where do you find yourself?
Actually, maybe this is a good one. Just throw a number in a chat. 1 is noob, 10 is OG. Where are you?
OG noob.
Yeah, both a 1 and a 10. I've been a noob for years, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the
Nobody's been a noob as
OGest
long as
noob.
I have. Haven't learned a thing.
Beginner's mind.
Okay, stop with the modesty. You guys are OGs. You
Yeah,
can't
come
you
on.
can't
I know if you
deny.
say something else, I know you're
I mean,
an OG.
the true OGs are 2016 and they're gone. So like,
No,
let's
those are
be real
noobs.
about
They're
the
not
deal.
here. They're noobs.
Fair enough. I'm enjoying actual laughter on one of these calls. Way to go, guys.
Not a joke.
It's not a joke. Okay, we got some numbers here. Yeah, Tim is definitely OG.
Well, not as in, I mean, I don't know if you guys have been missing the discussion, but at the end of May, unfortunately, I think I'll probably also be gone as an AD based on these edits that are coming in. So,
yeah. Do we want to talk about that?
Yeah.
I mean, I am undercaffeinated and pretty tired. If we feel
Yeah.
like that's important, I would say that it feels like the overwhelming weight of these edits being 150 pages or whatever make it really difficult to sort of have a reasoned opinion that doesn't involve way more swearing. But it's quite frustrating to have like feel like I kind of got a handle on being a delegate, and then being non-anon is not valued. But that's fine. I mean, people
I
move
think
around all the time.
as someone who's put together community meetings for years, a moderate amount of ranting is usually helpful. It's like talk therapy. So, I would say if we can set 30-second limits on ranting, everyone should be allowed to rant. Like, because
I mean, I've been
often-
joking all the time that Maker should just change its business models to be like everything that requires everyone else's emotional labor should have like be paid in die. So like if you go over 1,000 characters on the forum, you have to pay per character or something like that. Like we would be instantly profitable, and we wouldn't have any of these arguments. It'd be incredible. It's
That's
like you want to
great.
spam the channels in Discord. It's like, okay, cool. You got to drop a bunch of money into the pause proxy. Like we need to be way more composable with the way our business process works. You know.
Yeah, we're
Hey,
actually
this
very
is
pro bot.
composable CVC.
Yeah, we
Sorry
want
for
to be
taking us
totally
off the
botted.
rails. My bad.
Our model is getting botted heavily, spamming the entire
Like civil
forum.
resistance? No, we don't actually believe in that here.
Paper Imperium, sorry, I was cracking up at your at your note. God, yeah, there is a way that this feels way too true of too many crypto projects. Yeah. Okay. I think, yeah, maybe taking a stance in some ways on the delegate issue might be a good move for us. If people are open to talking about that for like 5 or 10 minutes. But again, my personal, just me. I personally think focusing on meta as much as possible is helpful. Like, what is the process, by which decisions are being made? Before we actually think
So
about what the actual decisions are. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, so just so you understand,
Yeah.
like it's already been queued up to be voted on this month. So you'll have
Right.
to vote against the entire amendment bundle
Yep.
if you
Yep.
yeah. And this is, I mean, this is probably retaliation for our voting against in game in March.
Yep.
So I mean, at the end of May, you'll have seen the majority of the core developers, the senior governance facilitator, and the overwhelming majority of delegates, all the old ones and several of the new ones probably gone if this passes.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like we can take a stance and we can fight this fight over the next month. And I'm open to it if everyone on this call thinks that that's worth it. Like totally fine with that. But I also wonder, are efforts better spent like trying to push for processes that could avoid this kind of thing from ever happening in the future? That's a genuine question. Like what is the best use of our time here?
I mean, for one, you shouldn't be allowing people that don't belong to this AVC to have their own biases. I think that's misalignment right there to begin with. So, yeah, ADs can vote the way you instruct them to, but I don't think anyone here should, you know, have a bias with regards to any of the proposals. We can provide research recommendations, but not biases. That's one thing I want to point out to you guys.
Can you say more about that? Like, my understanding is coming in here, we're supposed to be very clear about what our biases are, and I don't understand how you can make a recommendation without that implicitly carrying some sort of bias to it as well.
The aligned delegates, right? Like, I can't tell you, you know, that every single parameter that's been recommended by the decentralized collateral facilitator shouldn't be voted for. That's up to you folks to guide us. I mean, that's part of, you know, the Maker Constitution, which is essentially going to become the Atlas, right? Which is, you know, acting against universal alignment is pretty much no-no. Otherwise, we're just going to go back to the same old, which I know you guys weren't a part of this community, but it's going to become the same thing over repeat, rinse and repeat, which I think a lot of us here aren't interested in anymore. So, you know, you got to have your aligned governance strategy. You know, your aligned voter committees need to direct the ADs. You know, aligned voters can propose modifications to ensure universal alignment, but you guys can say, no, we don't want to support that for whatever reason. So we can propose all the modifications in the world, but it's up to you folks to decide if it's, you know, the aligned universal thing that you want to help the DAO with.
And on that note,
Well-
like, would it be fair to say, just yeah, in response to that, and also to your point, Jan Sky, like it's almost in terms of the profile itself of composable CVC, it is, you know, like almost codifying that bias, right? Like it is how we make decisions based on whatever proposals may come forward, but basically, yeah, the alignment of our bias as a group and how we make decisions.
Say group, are you referring to your AVC or everyone here?
Yes, composable CVC, ABC.
Right, so your bias, as long as it, you know, if it's misaligned on every single subcommittee meeting that you have, then obviously anybody here or even the facilitators can kind of push you out. I don't know what the right word is for that, but you know, you can read across all the MIPS and especially MIP 113 and kind of figure it out. So, I mean, the whole meta of this is to be universally aligned, right? Like, who are we to be ALM experts? Probably nobody. So we should hire advisory council members who are experts at that. You know, who are we to decide how a DAO is going to be run properly? Yeah, we could have our biases, but as ADs, we can't display them, right? We could just kind of help you with whatever strategy you decide upon, whether that's dovish, hawkish, balanced, or malicious, which I wouldn't recommend, but we can just help you with that. And, you know, ADs are more than welcome to step away, right? Like, currently I don't have any MKR to help you guys out with your bias, but ADs are also welcome to step out of here and go somewhere else where they think there's more alignment. So, I mean, that's the way I interpret the the Constitution and also the Atlas with the MIPS. Well, the Atlas hasn't been written correctly, but yeah, I mean, anybody here has a different opinion, maybe I'm overthinking it, more than welcome to step up and talk on the mic.
Yeah, maybe I can give my personal point of view here. And that's like, so the way I've seen it and run, and also like being a part of growth CVC, is that I think AVCs need to produce some strategic outlook, but that can be like pretty top level. I think the only kind of detailed thing we need to produce is the advisory scope process, advisory council process, like how to select these people. And I think that are like the formal requirements. And apart from that, I think we can do like whatever we want. And I think we had this discussion in this CVC basically pretty early on, that we want to focus like on these meta levels, like kind of surfacing governance issues, using the tools that Joe Council also provides, and then giving this additional output. But like in some ways, this is additional work that this CVC intended to do on top of what is required. And I think that's super valuable, because that will probably attract delegates and MKR holders to delegate to these CVC's delegates. But I think this is like the distinction. So have to do is these two things, like the councils and a top level view of how we want Maker to evolve, and then optional we can do these meta discussions, which I think are super fun, and also I think the reason why a lot of people joined here.
Okay, great. I appreciate it. If anyone else has anything on that they'd like to say, let us know. But yeah, from in terms of just, yeah, scoping down to the advisory council's just, I guess, decision-making process, and probably focusing on that so that we can focus on these meta conversations that I think are pretty important to all of the people here, and an area of, I think, unique interest and value that we can provide as a group, is probably how I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, it feels like there's pretty strong alignment here that our focus should be on the bigger objectives, rather than making recommendations about current issues. Does that hit home for everyone? Can you say more, Open Sky?
Yep. So in terms of, again, the requirements specifically for the advisory council decision making, remind me again, for each of the scopes, do those need to be separate? Like, do we need to create, yeah, we need the requirements for Composable CVC's opinion on how to elect advisory council actors, I guess, for each of the scopes, correct? Great. And I know I saw it earlier in the document, but like, should that all be within the same document? Okay, yeah. So 5 documents, 1 for each scope, with specific requirements for each. I had seen, I think specifically for refi, that they were all in one document, but we can make 5 different ones if we want. Yeah, I think it makes sense, at least in my head, like to just do one with the strategic outlooks more as chapters than a ton of different documents, but open to other opinions.
Yeah, I agree with all that, Defensor. I think that's a great idea, and I also should probably apologize because I think in my mind I am considering this all to be meta. Like the decision about what the best persona is for the kind of person we want to advise in my mind is a meta versus taking action or a stance on specific policy is a I don't know, whatever we want to call the opposite of meta, direct. But I also understand, yeah, Open Sky. That's a great point. That there's many layers of meta. So keeping the focus on our direct goals makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and on the topic, like we said, of alignment for next week, like what is the composable CVC, like definition of alignment, which obviously kind of manifests in that governance strategy position document, which then informs how advisory decisions are made. So it's like we start with almost the meta decision making process, which is then played out in how the requirements for each of the scopes would be manifested from our opinion, is how I see it. Okay, wait, yeah, there's a lot there's a lot of chat going on in here. And so just again yeah, knowing that we have 9 minutes left, knowing that we have a little bit of homework to do, that we've already kind of identified these 2 contests that we want to run before next week. But specifically, the one thing I want to get clarification on with respect to the scopes is just in terms of, it sounds like the governance strategy position document is just the one document specific to composable CVC's, point of view on how we make decisions. It sounds like we need advisory council requirements for each scope. So for this week, or like as prep work for next week, should we be going back and like backdating the previous scopes, or should we focus on, ecosystem for this upcoming week? Like, does it matter where we start? Because yeah, that's where like the balance of the meta versus the specific asks, like there's just a lot, at least in my head, that's not super clear in terms of prioritization of the scopes themselves. And on that note, yeah, specifically around protocol scope, like, is there also anyone that we want to bring in to talk next week? We had One Stone last week, which was great. Okay, we feel, and Open Sky, do you want to take the lead on reaching out to those members, or is that something that we should just include in our documentation for next week? Okay, great. So it sounds like then if we can start the documentation and just maybe have an async discussion about, yeah, just that as like a general criteria for what we think might be valuable for advisors to have either completed or have expertise in. I think that would be a great place to start. And then we can decide if we need more clarification there, if we want to bring someone in to talk, or if there's anyone that we should specifically reach out to. Yeah, I agree, Vigilant. Yeah, we'll include that as kind of like a something to react to. Um, and we can do that async before the next meeting. And then again, if we determine within that document or within the meeting next week that we want to bring people in to, ask questions or clarify any of the resulting decisions, we can do that. Okay. Do you think it would be valuable in the spirit of composability again? Like, I think we're trying to figure out how we can leverage the insights that come out of, let's say, that discussion. I know obviously they'll be tailored to the other AVC, but rather than having kind of the same people show up and summarize the same changes, is there a way that we can leverage some of those insights as opposed to asking for the exact same work to be done for this CVC that's already happening elsewhere? Yeah, that's what I figured. It was more so making sure I wasn't stepping out of bounds. I'm not like trying to take anyone's work. It's just there's obviously a lot to be done, and so where we can minimize duplicative effort is where I am biased towards. Okay, awesome. Cool. So it sounds like the majority of the work that we have in the next week is going to be async in those documents. And so we'll probably have a lot to discuss just in terms of finalizing some of the decisions and reading out some of the inputs from the contests that are going to happen in the next week. But as always, appreciate everyone sharing insights, showing up, and all the work that's been done so far. We're doing our best. Awesome. All right. Well, in that case, we will see you next week, and thank you again.